Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ask Cheeky. I'm Isaiah Henkel with Cheeky Scientist, and today's question comes from Rachel Tan. What does the average interview process look like? Very simple question, a very common question, but a complex answer. We could talk about this for hours, of course. So I'll try to give you an overview of what we see in terms of the interview process and the interview workflow from an employer's point of view. So when the interview process starts is usually after you get a referral, and maybe you submitted your resume as a formality after getting that referral. Then usually a hiring manager will contact you by email to set up a phone screen, or they may just call you if they have your phone number. So this phone screen, it's usually the first step, and it's the first part of the weeding out process. Now there's a lot of numbers online that you can research, but on average, for every 500 or so candidates that apply, only a handful will get a phone screen. And this phone screen, it's usually done by a hiring manager. And the hiring manager, very often they're not going to have a PhD. Very often they're not going to have a master's. Certainly they're not going to know the same level or depth of information about your field of study as you. They're making this phone screen for one reason and one reason only, to make sure that you can have a conversation, to make sure you're not an awkward PhD who's going to disrupt their team. It's really that first pass to ask you a few questions, see how you respond, kind of test out your transferable skills. Very little will be talked about in terms of your technical skills. They might just make sure that a couple of the right boxes are checked. For example, that you indeed do have a PhD, or when you might be graduating. They might talk about timelines, questions about why you're leaving academia. These are very common as well. If you do well on the phone screen, then usually you'll move on to a video interview. Now, before you would usually move on to an in-person interview, but with today's technology, very often you'll be doing a Skype interview or some other video interview using a different platform. Now, it's very important that you approach a video interview just like a full site visitor interview. You get dressed up, wearing a suit or your blouses or your dresses that you would wear for an interview. Look very professional. Practice it with somebody else. Make sure there's nothing in your background. Make sure there's plenty of light on your face, even if you have to shine a lamp directly in your face. Make sure that you're doing that. And this is where you might do one or two video interviews, because it allows the employer to save money and to ensure that you're a right candidate before spending a lot to fly you out for a site visit. Now remember, on average, it costs about $60,000 just to bring on a new employee. It's a very expensive process. This is, counting man and woman hours, the people that have to interview you, flying you out, background checks, all of this. So this is why video interviews are much more popular. Again, because then they can weed out the job candidate pool more before inviting 2, maybe 3 at the most people out for a site visit. So if you do well on the phone screen and the video interview, you'll get invited to a site visit most often. This site visit, depending on the position, you could have to give a presentation, right? Something similar to a chalk talk, although it'll be very different for industry, usually very short, and you'll want to focus on your audience, especially the type of technology or that company's doing, or whatever they're hiring you for. It could just be you talking to 6, 7 different people. We've seen up to 8 interviews that usually last 30 minutes to 45 minutes apiece on a site visit, or 3, so anywhere in between. And you'll be interviewing with people that it's a wide range of people. It could be a hiring manager first, and then some people who are kind of in lateral positions that you'll be working with directly, people who have the job title you're going to have if you get the job, all the way up to directors, even VPs or CEOs, depending on the role. And this is where you really have to be prepared and make sure that you're always on during this time. Even during the lunch period, if they take you out for drinks afterwards, whatever it might be, never break character from being a job candidate who's applying for a job, because especially during the lunches and the in-between times, they're still paying attention to you, and this is where they know your guard might be down, so they can get more information out of you and see how you'll really act. So when you're on that site visit, make sure you're always being 100% professional. Hopefully this gave you some insights into the kind of an overview of what the interview process will look like for most PhD level jobs. So we will be back with another Ask Cheeky soon. Until next time, remember your value as a PhD and start thinking and acting like a successful industry professional.